What's the weirdest thing you've ever seen happen at work? I work in an office and thought it would be funny to put googly eyes on my coworker's desk one day. Everyone had a good laugh over it, and a couple weeks I found googly eyes on all my stuff. It became a game of who could arrange googlies on people's desk in the most creative, funny manner. It was hilarious. Then one of the adjacent departments caught wind of the good times we were having and started doing the same. Cue a month later and there are googly eyes everywhere. It was absurd. On the drinking fountains, clocks, vending machines, garbage cans, toilets, you name it, there were googly eyes littered all over the goddamn place. The custodians started complaining that they couldn't keep up with the mess. Visiting customers would look around at the googly spectacle in disbelief of the unprofessionalism. The head managers had to hold team meetings to talk to all the teams about removing all googly eyes, and of course since I started it, any time a rogue googly eye popped up months later, I got a stern look from my boss. The day that I quit there, or get fired, more likely, there will be an unleashing of googly eyes that will be unrivaled. People will be swimming through piles of googly eyes just to get to their completely googly eye-covered desks. The vents will be spitting out plastic eyeballs of all shapes and sizes. People will open their lunches they brought from home and gasp in shock as they find nothing but little beady shaky eyes looking up from their Tupperware. There will be googly eyes. While working at a supermarket, I was walking through the dairy department and saw a fellow employee over by the eggs. As I got closer I could see him with a carton open and he seemed to be turning each egg. After doing the whole pack, I asked him what he was doing and he responded, "The manager asked me to rotate the eggs." I facepalmed and explained what they actually meant, to which he replied, "That makes a lot more sense." For context, in the grocery world, to rotate means to make sure the earliest dates of expiration are towards the front of the shelf. It was a really slow day and I kept getting distracted from the Lord of the Rings fanfiction I was reading by the weird squeaky noises I kept hearing behind me. I finally turned around and there was my manager, a 35-year-old man, about 3/4 of the way done with making a balloon animal crown for his life-sized Homer Simpson statue. I asked him to make me a doggy when I was done, and he did a blue one. I kept it until I accidentally popped it, which scared one of my other coworkers. This was in the 80s at a bad software company run entirely by men. Wonder of wonders, an extremely competent and popular woman programmer was appointed to a management position in development. The younger developers decided to have a parade. She was of Scandinavian descent, so they made for her a horned helmet and sword out of aluminum foil, and made for her a sedan chair out of a wooden chair with a couple of pieces of lumber under the arms for support. Then they carried her outside on the chair while she waved her sword, and paraded her around the parking lot at the head of a long column of programmers wearing fish hats and throwing firecrackers. I never understood the fish hats. Edit, and kazoo music. I forgot that. Those were the days. I actually wrote up a whole encounter with my strange Russian coworker the other day, but I can't get to Tumblr on my work computer. My weirdest counter with him though was I had to go into the lab during lunch and he was in there, with all the lights off wearing nothing but an undershirt lifting a single weight with Let's Grove by Earth, Wind, and Fire at full volume playing from his computer. Also his desk neighbor has had to make one of his monitors vertical because Igor will change at his desk in the middle of the office. I worked the cameras at a casino and there was a kid old enough to drink who was given a free room to stay in because he was about to drive drunk. Instead of taking the room, he checked in, walked out the back exit, ran down a hill, ran full speed along the highway, army crawled his way up to his car, got in, drove off the parking lot, and was pulled over immediately. Was in a big meeting in a construction trailer and answer a knock on the door. Two guys look like a Coop's laborers, dirty clothes shirts have contractor names on them. Ask for a guy with a picture on a cell phone and name a company that's on site. It's a large site with a couple hundred workers, no way for me to know. Say I can go get their foreman from the meeting. At this point one very discreetly pulls a U.S. Marshal's badge out of his front pocket. Tells me to get the foreman but not to make any disturbances. The guy they're looking fire moves drugs, and apparently also finishes sheetrock for fun I guess. Says they've got the 5-acre site surrounded and if this guy finds out they're here things would go bad quickly. Turns out the guy wasn't there but still pretty weird. Our office shares a bathroom with the dental office next door. The dentist is a weirdo. I'll walk in and he will jump like he was doing something he wasn't supposed to. There are other things, but he comes off as slimy. When I had an internship in an office, the second highest boss opened the door without knocking, stared at us aggressively, walked towards us and offered a box of chocolate marshmallows. Then he went out. He didn't say one word. I work in downtown Toronto. My job requires that I go to those high-end consultancy firms every once in a while. The big names. You'd know them. One morning I was walking into the building for an all-day meeting. Normal fall day. Cold. The lobby was beautiful as always. Chandelier. Big glass windows. As I headed over the elevators I looked towards a commotion at the door. A well-groomed, middle-aged, man was screaming at the top of his lungs by the revolving door. Naked. Totally. Naked. His suit was neatly folded on a bench and he had just lost it. Apparently he was a partner at this firm and the stress got to him. He just snapped. I work in a kindergarten for kids with special needs. One kid kept going for a quiet place few times a day, and we figured he just needed some time alone. This was outside in the playground where there was a little treehouse in the back behind some trees. On the third day of this happening I went to see what's up and encourage him to talk about why he needed time alone. I found him sitting on the ground eating one big spoon full of sand after the other. We're not just talking baby eating sand here, more like a medium-sized kid shoveling sand down his stomach like it was his favorite food. So yeah, this little boy probably ate a lot of sand during those 3 days and probably longer. In a creche daycare. One of the moms dropped off her baby and when handing him to one of the staff she kissed the staff member on the face and said, "Love you," and went off to work. Phoned a couple hours later to say, "I've just realized what I did this morning. I'm so sorry, I was half asleep and I guess I'm so used to handing him to my husband." We had a good laugh. For backstory, I work in an area that has a high population of homeless people. One day, I pulled up to work and got out of my car. I had to park across the street from my office next to an empty dirt lot because our parking is very limited. When I got out, I saw a homeless man laying on an old, abandoned couch right next to my car. He was playing the guitar and had a bottle of alcohol laying next to him. He looked at me as I was looking at him, so I smiled back and told him to have a nice day. He smiled too and told me to have a good day as well. I looked out my office window a few times that day to check on him. My entire shift, for about 6.5 hours, he was just laying on that couch, sleeping. His guitar was still right next to him and his bottle was now empty. Even when I left that day, he was still laying there. I contemplated giving him one of my blankets I had in my car, but it was my childhood blanket so I couldn't. Came back the next day and there is an ambulance, police cars and a giant white van surrounding where that man once laid. I guess a bunch of my co-workers were checking the guy out the day before because something didn't seem right, but they just assumed he was drunk. Nope. He was dead. Nobody even knew until the next day when my co-worker went up to the homeless guy and asked if he was okay. Kind of shook everyone up for a little. Pretty sad stuff. 2 things come to mind from when I worked at department store in college. A woman came into the store, went through the perfume aisle, took a few bottles into the layaway storage room, and drank them. This was all right before closing, maybe 10 minutes, or so. Watching this on camera was one of the funniest things I've ever seen. Some dude came in strumming a banjo as he followed his sew around as she shopped. I, and all of my coworkers, searched for someone with a camera to see if it was some sort of gag, but nope. Dude just walked the aisles with his girl playing the banjo to keep himself occupied. I work at a small fancy Chinese restaurant and last night me and my friend went in to go eat, visit some coworkers. We went in at the time where it was slowing down so much that the servers had time to sit and chat. We have a music system that will play CDs quietly over speakers throughout the restaurant. At one point when we had finished eating, me and my friend hear a piano and I think to myself, wow, these speakers are loud, but only after turning my head to the right to investigate, I see a keyboard. Someone managed to bring an entire keyboard into this restaurant. Me and my friend give each other a confused look only to be followed by the party taking up half of one of 3 dining rooms, beginning to sing choir music. Me, my friend, and some coworkers proceed to burst out laughing. One Monday morning, at 8 a.m., there was a frog in the lobby. Not a small frog, either a big frog. The front doors were still locked and it was Monday morning, so we had no idea how the little guy got into the lobby. He would have had to have hopped all the way from the back of the building to get to the lobby. I worked in a small office. There was a front lobby area with a conference room off to the side. It was separated by a door from the rest of the office. So I'm sitting at my desk, just working, and I hear screaming from the front lobby area, like straight up someone is being murdered screaming. Everyone in the office area is freaking out, assuming there was a robbery or something horrible happening in the front. I hear someone shrieking for help, so I'm like, okay, this is clearly not a dangerous situation, it must be a medical emergency or something like that. I tell one of my coworkers to call 911. I proceed to open the door quietly and walk towards the lobby. I do not see anyone, even the receptionist, but the screaming is still going on from inside the conference room. I slowly open the door and find about 8 people on top of the table, including the owners of the company and a couple clients. I'm just staring at them, seriously confused about what I just walked into. I look down and see a tiny little field mouse hopping around in circles around the table. I picked the little guy up and became the hero of the day. 911 dispatched a couple of police officers over a tiny mouse. My raise that year was substantially higher than usual. I was visiting our warehouse, which looked pretty standard as all things go. Tall shelves loaded with pallets, conveyor belts and forklifts going to and fro, burly men and women in high-vis attire pottering about. When all of a sudden a song broke out over the PA system and every single person started dancing. Their expressions didn't change, they didn't stop what they were doing or where they were going, they all just danced as they went about their business. A few seconds later the music stopped and they resumed normal existence. It was so bizarre. Like they had been brainwashed to respond to the music and didn't recognize their own conditioning. Turns out that's all part of their ergonomics program. Every so often the music starts up and they're meant to move about as a form of stretching. I work for a delivery app. I was picking up a fast food order and an open carry guy comes in. There's a security guard at this joint, weird, and he notices it right away. Open carry isn't allowed in here, sir. Please leave. They start arguing and yelling at each other and I felt I should get out of here immediately even though I paid with the app card but hadn't received the food yet, and as I was leaving, I noticed other customers leave as well. My app understood the situation and didn't penalize me. My old office had these giant floor-to-ceiling windows that would get washed every month or so. One month the window washer was outside the window I faced with a long pole to wash the second-story windows. He let it fall away from the building too far and it hit a power line right in front of us. We all thought we had watched him die, but he ended up getting into the ambulance unassisted to go get checked out. I saw 2 women try to steal $500 worth of groceries by shoving their items in plastic trash cans. They got caught and made a whole scene in the front of the store, where I had a front row seat. One of the women got into the produce manager's face, accusing him of profiling them. They were all the same race, so I was confused. She then basically windmilled our cup display at Starbucks and broke a few cups. Our store manager then shoved one of the women into the carts and they left. I was having a conversation with 2 coworkers during lunch. A third was sitting at his desk minding his own business. Suddenly this third guy shot to his feet, lifted the little guy the first was talking to over his head and held him there. He set him back down and returned to his seat as if it had never happened. The 3 of us were shaken and had thought the bully was doing to bodyslam the little guy. We all reported it and got told it was horseplay and not to ever mention it again. I didn't actually see the act, but the evidence was clear for all to see. I used to work in a pub kitchen. We were all having drinks after work one night and the manager and the new girl disappeared. It was obvious what they were up to and we were all adults, so no one really thought much of it. Until I opened up my kitchen the next morning and saw bum and hand marks on my stainless steel worktop. Needless to say, I was not happy having to clean my kitchen again. This week, I was at the cafeteria, washing my hands before lunch, since we have a raw sink just for that at the entrance of the cafeteria. A group of about 30 kids, all around 12 and 13 years old, came in, and every single one of them went to wash their hands without me or any other adult needing to remind them to do so. And they even used soap. I used to work in landscaping and in the winter would do snow removal. My boss hired a lot of Craigslist randos for snow shoveling, and because it's Craigslist, you got all kinds of people. The weirdest incident I can remember was this guy working with my boss and I when a police car pulled up. The cop talked to the guy for a minute and then arrested him. Apparently the guy was on parole and had one of those ankle monitors that track your blood alcohol level. As he was getting led away, he yelled to my boss, "I had some beers before I came out, please don't fire me." Never saw that dude again.